Good evening and welcome to our Goizueta Executive MBA chat. We're going to be discussing our modular Executive MBA program today. If you haven't joined us for our chats online, you are in for a treat. We've got our associate deans of our executive program and our admissions MBA set here to talk with us today. I will let them introduce themselves and then we'll go over some housekeeping and go ahead and get ourselves started. So I will turn it over to JD first.
Thanks, Angela. Hi, I'm Jonathan Darcy. I'm the Associate Dean of the Executive MBA programs at Goizueta, and I'm happy to be here with you tonight. I'm a former consultant and strategy partner at Accenture, and I've moved over to Emory about 2.5 years ago, and I'm delighted for you to explore the program with us. Julie?
Hi. I'm Julie Barefoot. I'm an Associate Dean for MBA admissions for all of our programs, and I'm very excited to be able to chat with you specifically about the modular MBA program this evening.
Wonderful. So a little bit of housekeeping before we go ahead and get started. The chat is interactive, so you should feel free to submit your questions at any point in time. We do have slides, and we're going to talk through some important elements of the of the modular program that will be probably relevant to you. But if you have specific questions, go ahead and answer them. We will either try to get them answered on the chat, either through JD or Julie, or on the back end privately if they're related to something that we have not yet covered or won't be covering on the chat today. And then afterwards, the entire transcription of this chat will be available via email. So we'll be able to send this out to you probably in about 5 to 7 business days. So more importantly, go ahead and make sure you're getting your questions in there, but then listening to what JD is kind of walking through as he's going to discuss the value propositions for the program as a whole. So with that, I'm going to move it over and turn it to JD, who's going to talk to us about our value points.
Sure, thank you, Angela. So let me start as a business person. Let me start with the bottom line. And that is why you should be considering an executive MBA program, and specifically why Goizueta, we believe, is the best program available to you. And that goes to our value points. And I'd like to start with some words from Roberto Goizueta, who was the head of Coca-Cola, took Coca-Cola from a relatively medium-sized company into a global player and the #1 brand in the world. And he happens to have named the school for himself. And the reason that he felt so strongly about Goizueta and about executive education for executives in particular was this quote that's at the top of the slide. He believed very strongly that business schools need to teach not the way business is, but the way business should be, and it will be in the future. And that's really the core of our philosophy at Goizueta in our executive MBA programs. We don't want to just teach you the set of tools, a set of analyses. We want to prepare you to be leaders today, tomorrow, and for the next 30 to 40 years in your career. And we don't, honestly, no one knows exactly what business is going to look like 20 or 30 years from now, but we give you the tools, the curiosity, and the connections to be able to navigate those changes and to help drive those in the world. So if you think about it, the 4 things that we really feel are the differentiators for our program come down to, first, practical theory; second, personal investment; third, the power of Atlanta, which is one of the greatest business cities in the world; and the fourth is the magic of membership. So let me touch on those briefly before I go into how that plays out in the modular program as well as more broadly in our curriculum. So the first piece is about practical theory, and we chose those words very carefully because we believe theory not attached to practice, or practice not attached to theory, is really not as powerful as if you put those 2 pieces together and really focus on learning the theory and then applying it to your business immediately. And one of the reasons that I'm sitting in this chair is that I'm a business person who's done that. And all of the professors that work with us in the program and who will teach you also are people who blend this practical and theory. The second piece is around personal investment. Personal investment means several different things, but we focus on two different components. One is the investment that you make in yourself, in your career, and in your future. And that's a significant personal investment of your time, money, and effort while you're in school. But there's also investment that we make in you as well. We purposefully select who we bring into this program and who we bring into the mix of the classroom, so that we are purposefully making an investment in the class that we have and the individuals, because we think the people who we bring into the program are the people who will really benefit from what we offer and will help drive business for the next 20 to 30 years. The third piece of why this place is special is around Atlanta Power. Now, Atlanta is, and I have to say, I am a native, so I have a little bit of
a little bit of bias
a little bit
there.
of bias. But Atlanta is the 10th largest metropolitan area in the U.S. It's the third largest concentration of Fortune 500 headquarters. And if you look at just our economy for Atlanta versus the world economies, our economy is bigger than Iran. It's a pretty big place. And the power of Atlanta is, and what it's always been built on, is connections. And part of that plays out in the international airport and the other connections that we have. But it's also the connections that Atlanta as a business community has into the U.S. as well as the global business community. And the people that we bring into our program are from all over the world, and they go to all over the world to continue to build on this network of Atlanta. And that brings me to the last piece, which is around the magic of membership. Let me be really clear. Brand matters. And the Emory brand is the best brand that you can associate, one of the best brands in the United States, one of the best brands globally, and certainly the best brand in the South that you will be able to associate with. Our magic of membership, it opens different doors than if you go to other educational institutions. And it also opens the door not only of Goizueta and of the Executive MBA program, but also of the overall Emory community of over 130,000 living alumni. That's a pretty good network, and we think that these four things together really make a big differentiator for why Goizueta is a great choice for executive MBAs.
Fantastic. Before we move to the next slide, I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about the elements here, because there have been some questions about sort of how these relate to the modular program.
Sure.
So if we tackle them one at a time and start with the idea of practical theory, you talked about the evergreen education and the fact that what you're learning in the classroom will be elements that you can use in any of your career place, no matter where you're going. How does a modular student get a chance to experience that? And more importantly, what type of learning do they get to take away that you would say kind of really is a hallmark of that evergreen education?
Great question. So let me answer that in a couple of different ways. First way is just the overall purpose of this education. We're not teaching you to be the best regression modeler or the best person with big data. The biggest thing that you'll take away from the modular program is the ability to continually think about how business is evolving, to apply core tools that have been in business for the last 150 years and are evergreen in their applicability, and to continually learn and evolve. So you will be put through the modular program an intensive 20 months of learning both on the campus when you're here for your 10 residencies, as well as when you are in between campuses. But what that instills is this idea and a hunger really in students and alumni to continually learn and grow. And that, to us, is the real evergreen of the education. It's this thirst for knowledge and this thirst for growth and this curiosity about how the world and business is evolving, as well as how that creates opportunities and that you can take advantage of after your education.
And I think one of the big parts that you mentioned is for a modular student, being able to have that interaction with individuals who can talk about those tested business principles. I know some of the folks who are joining us in the chat aren't in the business industry currently. They may be in a role that is more in healthcare or in the governmental space, and learning the tested business principles, as you discussed, as opposed to learning, like you said, how to become a regression analysis guru, really does make it very evergreen learning. In terms of the education or the academics that are in the modular program, do those differ from the weekend program, or are they learning kind of the same things? Is the program education the same?
So the curriculum itself is the same for both WIMBA and sorry, I go into jargon. I'm a consultant. I can't help it. For the weekend program as well as the modular program, with some very minor differences. The difference as far as the educational experience is really one of learning styles. If you're in the weekend program, you're here every other weekend. And there's a certain amount of discipline that comes automatically from being on campus every 2 weeks. If you're in the modular program, you are here for an intensive 7 days. And then you're gone for 10 weeks in which you do distance education with your classmates, team, and professors. There is, I think for the modular students, they're generally a bit more mature, a bit more advanced in their career. They probably have a higher level of responsibility than some of our weekend students, and as a result, they adapt to the need of the program, which is to be a bit more disciplined and diligent on a day-to-day basis, just like exercise and diet and everything else that you have to take care of. The modular students are disciplined.
Approaching it that way.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So when you move from practical theory to the personal investment side, you spoke a lot about somebody who's making an investment in their own future and the intentionality with which we select the class.
Right.
Talk a little bit more about the modular class makeup, understanding people's interests and their backgrounds, but also what they intend to get out of the degree. What is the a desired outcome of the program, and how you all, from an admission standpoint and a program standpoint, take those things into consideration to shape a class that can have the most impact. So
could I pass it to Julie on the admissions front to start with?
Yeah, and I think one thing that makes our program special is the care in which we take to actually develop that class, to craft the class, as Angela said. And one key way we do that is that JD, our colleague, actually serves on the admissions committee. So it's not just myself and my admissions colleagues, but it's also the program dean. And I think that perspective of what's sort of needed in the classroom and what's in the ways that we've had success in the classroom, it's really in building a diverse class. So we actively recruit candidates from a broad range of industries with different types of backgrounds. And so when JD was talking about experience levels, we're looking for individuals who have progressed in their career to a managerial, a director level, or they could be an entrepreneur, run their own business. They can be a physician. So we have individuals that have in those sort of professional service roles. And we take a lot of care in reviewing their application, in making sure that they have something meaningful to contribute in the class, that they've thought through what types of learning they want in the class, what are their goals, and that it's really a good match for what we can deliver. So I think that some key differentiators for Goizueta in terms of the makeup of the class is that it is diverse, both in terms of industry, functional backgrounds. We have people, as I said, with professional backgrounds, people who have working for major companies, and all those types of experiences really make for very rich discussions in the classroom.
Yeah, and to build on that, just from a program perspective, as I said, I've been in this role for almost about 3 years, so I've seen 4 classes now. And it's amazing when I stand in front of the class, the modular class on the first day, and I look out and I hear everyone's story. I have to say, I stand back and I go, my gosh, how is all this going to gel? How are all these people going to gel? Because there's so many different perspectives. I mean, we have 40% of our students approximately are from outside the Atlanta area, many of which are from Turkey and South America and other countries in which we're closely affiliated. We have very senior level doctors, lawyers, professionals, as well as senior business people. And yet they all come together and they build a different set of lenses for each other to view the business world and to learn and to grow. It's really, it's quite amazing, and it's a great thing to be part of. And we start in admissions, and then we build that through the program. And I know the professors who teach certainly they consistently tell me they get as much out of the students teaching them as much as they are teaching the students and facilitating the learning experience. And that would only be from what we do from very carefully picking the class to come in with.
Absolutely. And I would say that that dovetails nicely into the kind of Atlanta power, because in addition to having people who are from all kind of industries, we have individuals in our member program who are from all over the world.
Mhm.
And there's a lot to be said for coming to Atlanta and doing your learning here in Atlanta, whether you are first or new to Atlanta or whether you're
Mhm.
doing business here and that's the reason why you're involved. So briefly talk about some of the value of kind of an Atlanta power and why should I care if I'm not a local student, if I'm not going to be living here, what does the Atlanta power do for me?
Mhm. Well, I think again, I'm a little bit biased, but I think that it's really important to be centered in the education that wherever you go to, that you are centered and you're part of the fabric of the community in which you take your executive MBA. And if you're going to do that, there is no others, I mean, just as far as connectedness, there's no school, I think, that is in any community that's more connected and part of the fabric of a major city like Emory is. We are tied deeply with Coca-Cola, which is one of the key drivers of the Atlanta economy evolution, and we have been intertwined from the very beginning. So we're very tightly tied in the community. I think that's very important. And that would be something that I would advise you wherever you are in your career, regardless of executive education, you need to be tied into your community. The second thing is Atlanta is deeply intertwined in the global economy. We have the largest airport in the world. We're one of the 3 largest transportation hubs in the world. Everybody, you have to come to Atlanta before you go to heaven or hell. You got to change planes here. So if you're going to do that, I think that Atlanta, after the Olympics, and we have the name recognition, and we are a truly global, world-class city. And that brings with it the connection between Emory and Atlanta and the global economy. We have people from Atlanta here. We have people who are in Atlanta temporarily. We have people who go all over the world to continue their career, and our network of alumni is all over the world. So, we're a global city. We're tightly connected with that as Emory University and as Goizueta, and our alumni are all over the world, making a whole lot of money and changing the world and making it safe for business. So, I'll stand with that.
I think that whenever people talk about Atlanta, I'm always surprised about how much there is to learn about the city. And like you said, it's got an enormous amount of firepower in terms of what it can do for business and how the modular students, when they're here, and then even when you're gone, just have access to a wealth of individuals and networks, but also business knowledge that really does play into the classroom. And so that helps us as we move. I'm going to save the magic of membership because we talk a little bit more about that as we get a little bit further down. So I'm not skipping your question, I promise. But I want to talk a little bit more about the curriculum side of that, and to talk a little bit more on our next slide about how you would actually take that curriculum applicability and make that relevant for somebody who's doing this modular.
That's great. So the nice segue into our curriculum, which is we like to call it Learn on Friday what you can apply on Monday. In the case of the modular program, it's really learning, apply on Monday what you learned from last Sunday to Saturday, and it's the concept behind that is that we don't want to teach you something that you're going to put on a shelf and then refer to as a textbook or an article somewhere down the road, maybe someday. What we want you to do is to challenge you during the week that you're here on campus and also during the distance period, but in particular during your residency week as a modular student. You come in and you're grappling with the cases and the learning that you have in the classroom, but you're also connecting that in the class and outside the class with what you do every day and the specific problems that you have in your business. So part of the great thing about the modular program is that you are with your cohort of 30 or so peers. You're there for 7 days from sunup to sundown. And I will say that sunup to sundown during the modular program is a little longer than the day outside. But you're taking, and it's an incredibly rich environment in which you start in the classroom and then you continue off when you go back to the conference center, and when you have dinner and chatting afterwards. It's really it's a rich environment, and I really enjoy having the opportunity to participate in that, in some of those conversations, especially when those conversations move into opportunities at work to apply what they're learning immediately, as well as opportunities to build new businesses, which is another a great side benefit that a lot of people who come out of this program, they end up starting a business with one of their peers.
Mm-hmm. I do think when you talk about the curriculum applicability, and you touched on it briefly, the fact that the students, when they're here and they're in the conference center, there are so many opportunities to take what you may have learned that day or what you might be working on that evening and talk it through so that you're basically putting it into practice before you're even leaving the campus, if you will. And that really does result in not just learning knowledge, but being able to put it into play and see it in action and understand how you can use it. And that really, to your learn on Friday and apply it on Monday, you have opportunities to test it out, to test drive that theory before you sort of leave the classroom setting. And that is distinctly unique for our member students is, like you said, those are 7 days that they're together.
Right.
So talk a little bit more about during the time that they're here and that they're together as cohorts. What does the classroom experience look like? What do they do when they're together in terms of in the classroom learning? And then beyond that, outside of classroom hours, you mentioned the conference and other places. What does their life look like a little bit?
So the classroom, I think you need really, the best way to do this is to experience it and come to do a class visit. But during the classroom, basically you're in class all day. You have a morning class and an afternoon class. Each is about 3.5 hours long. So you can think of 2 halves of the day. Each class has 2 segments. So you got 4 sessions per day. What happens in the classroom is a mix of a little bit of lecture and a whole lot of discussion. The discussion is usually based on cases, and the discussion of the case usually goes off into how this case applies to what's happening in the jobs of the 30 or so people in the classroom with them. The experience is very different from undergrad. And there's a couple of flavors for that. The first is the professor is less of a lecturer and telling you and much more of a facilitator. I liken it more to an orchestra conductor than anything else. These are very deep knowledge experts, but they're also people who spend a lot of time in the field with people like our students as consultants. And so they know business as it practically exists, and they also know the theory on the other side. Their job as professors is to take the readings, the cases, and the lectures that they give, and to help you engage with that material and apply it to what you know, and through that to grow as a class. So you have a lot of heated discussion. It's guided and orchestrated by the professor, but it's driven by the interaction between the students as well as the professors bringing in their perspective as well. But it's very much, you show up, it's game day, and you need to be prepared, and you need to be engaged. And to be perfectly honest, it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's much more fun than undergrad, especially if you had a chemistry class at 7:50 in the morning. It's not like that at all. So the day that's what your classroom looks like. We also have co-curricular activities that take place. Co-curricular activities, I teach one piece as an example, which is around my former career as some of the process skills from strategy consulting. But there's also that we bring in speakers who may or may not be alumni, who are at the top of their field, to talk about some of the challenges that they have in their business. So we have a full day, and then in the evening, you go and you basically prepare and work for the next day. Part of that work is it's like a lot of work these days. It's blended between work and pleasure, but through that you develop really deep relationships with the folks in your cohort, as well as really deeply engage with the material and apply it to your work.
So I think you made a great segue into kind of the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the faculty. And I know that we had a question in earlier about the faculty and sort of not just what the faculty will be teaching, but what kind of experience the faculty have. And I know our modular students most often want to understand kind of what kind of relationship they'll have with that. So I'll let you talk a little bit about the faculty, but making sure that we're understanding kind of what a modular student should expect when it comes to the faculty and the faculty experience.
Sure. So the faculty that we have teaching in the Executive MBA program overall are our most experienced faculty. And by experience, there's the gray hair element, but there's also the amount of time that they spend out in the field as well as the amount of research that they do. So we really have, we have the best of the best, and they come from, as far as where they come from, name the top 10 schools in the world, Harvard, Wharton, Emory, Booth. These are where our faculty come from. And as I said, they're very, they all consult as well as teach. What you should expect as a student is to have less of someone who is telling you and more of someone who is guiding you, more like a Sherpa. And
I would like to go on record that you just called a faculty member Sherpa, and I'd like to use that going forward. That is fantastic.
That is. So your Sherpa is also your. It's kind of a Sherpa priest consultant mix. So the Sherpa is your guide, someone who is going to take you through and teach you and guide you through engaging with their subject matter expertise. Your priest is that they're going to help you and advise you on your business problems. And one of the interesting things, and I think real differentiator about Goizueta, is just the amount of, you're in the classroom, but the faculty spend an enormous amount of time with students outside, working on not only the academics, but also on how the application happens, which gets into the third piece, is consultant, because these people, there's a lot of free consulting that happens in the classroom and outside between the faculty and students, as well as faculty and alumni. And I'm just, whenever I go out and speak with alumni, like I had a lunch today, I'm consistently impressed by the amount of contact that goes on afterwards. And it's not just that you have this transactional relationship with faculty. They're deep experts. They deeply care about learning, but they're just curious individuals and are really interested in the businesses and the help that they can give to both students as well as alumni longer term. So that to me is a real differentiator for our program, and something that you can expect that is different from perhaps a bigger school or a program that is not as centered in one location as we are.
And I want to make sure I asked the question that came in more specifically, because we're a modular program, but not one that moves around. So you have the interaction with those faculty kind of ongoing. Are there different sets of faculty that teach in different times, or will they be the same faculty in each one of their residencies?
No, the faculty change every residency. You will, each residency, you will finish one set of classes with 2 faculty members, 2 classes at a time, and then you will start 2 new classes. So there's an overlap. So you will spend time with each faculty member. You'll spend time with them over 2 residencies. So you have 2 residencies and a distance portion, and then you'll change faculty. So over the course of the program, you have 17 courses that you take. You will have 15 different faculty members, I think that's right, who will be teaching you, as well as the other support folks in the Career Management Center, the people who from my group and from others who will help you in your program.
So as you're thinking through it, one of the questions that we came in was about the idea that the curriculum, like you said, being applicable, and the faculty who are teaching it are all very knowledgeable in their areas of business. But can you talk about some of the non-business topics that get tackled in the program? So are there elements of things in healthcare, or things in politics, or things in other tangential elements related to business that become part of the classroom curriculum?
So I'll first talk about just the structure overall of the program. So the core of our program is, of course, the academics and the 17 classes that you take as your modular executive MBA. We have 2 tracks that are on top of that that we call co-curricular, that complement what happens in the classroom, and that I think helps you create a little dynamic tension in between two different frames that you can look at the world. One of those is called leadership practice, which is how do you, as a leader, affect change in yourself, your team, your organization, and your industry. So that's leadership practice. The other piece is called management practice, which is how you make a decision about what you push. So basically, how do you take a big, messy problem? You've got this toolkit that you've developed through your academics, but how do you apply that? How do you take a big, messy problem that is unstructured, may not even be clear what the real root problem is, and define that, structure it, and solve it, and come to the best solution that you can then drive to through the program. So what that means in your day-to-day life as a modular executive student is that you will have your classroom experience, and then we will have a session every residency that is on management practice, which is the tools of how you solve these messy problems. Part of that is a toolkit. Part of it's about some of the strategy consulting skills. Part of it's process. How do you manage teams? How do you manage problems? And part of it is experience, which is when we bring in people who have faced these really messy problems, like the CFO who we bring in, who's one of our alums from a major aluminum company, who has been part of a sale of a company to take it private, and then a spinoff of the same company to take it public again. So we bring in, those three elements are, we bring in as part of every week that you come onto campus, as well as in between in the residency, in the distance learning portions of the experience.
So Julie, I think there's a good follow-up question that I was going to pass back to JD, but I think it's better for you to kind of think through it, is for individuals who are interested in the MEMBA program, who are coming from non-traditional background, meaning not from a traditional business background, how do you all consider their kind of experience and their work to know not just what they can get out of the classroom, but to make sure that this would be the right mesh of what they're looking to get out of the degree? How do you evaluate that process?
It's a great question. We do it in several ways. One is that we encourage candidates at the prospect stage, when they're thinking about it, to meet with us, to have a conversation. That for modular candidates, that may be over the phone, and just to really get a sense of what their goals are. Where are they in their career? Where is it that they want their career to go? What's sort of the next stage for them? And we have a consultation and talk with them about it. It's interesting when we have that conversation. It's a dialogue, and we end up making recommendations about what's the right fit for them. Will our program help you get to that next level? Will our program, the elements that JD was talking about, we find that for professional services, there are usually several sort of reasons. We have a lot of experience because in every class we have several individuals with sort of professional services. That would be lawyers, doctors, people. Sometimes they have their own business or their own practice, and often what they're looking for is they want to have a better seat at the table, so to speak. They're a doctor. They work for a large healthcare organization. They're very good at what they do, right? They've been successful as a practitioner, but they don't know the language of business. They haven't learned that. And especially now with all the changes going on in healthcare, that's probably the best example of, it's just tremendous change. And because financial and business decisions, strategy decisions, all of that are playing so much into what's happening in that industry, physicians can be frustrated that they don't feel like that they have the tools to fully understand some of the decisions that they should be making or where they should take their practice. And so we have that discussion, as a consultation. Sometimes it may have to take place in an interview setting, but we get a sense about their background and to understanding, all right, your goals make sense relative to our program. We can help you. We can give you those tools, as JD was saying, give you a way of thinking So it's not just the analytical tools, but it's also that perspective, that desire to learn and to grow and to be and to know what questions to ask. You know, in sort of in a session, in a meeting, a business meeting that let's say a physician might have, to know what questions to ask because they've been given a different way to think.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Can I follow up on that?
Absolutely.
Because I realize I didn't answer part of your question.
Oh, I like that. But you circled back around so well.
But Julie was talking about healthcare and physicians in particular, and you were asking about the some government and how do we expose you to government and some other issues around that. So there's a very particular with healthcare, which is near and dear to me because I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 15 years. We have a concentration in healthcare that we just launched this year that is particularly focused on modular students. And what it is an opportunity to add on to what you learn in your modular executive MBA and take the lessons from that and apply it specifically to healthcare. Part of that is around applying strategy to healthcare situations and the evolution of the, in particular, U.S. healthcare system, but also the global system. But we also have other components that include going to Washington campus to meet with lawmakers and regulators to understand how the regulatory process and the legal process intersect with the business of healthcare and with the humanitarian aspect of healthcare, so that you, if you're a physician or if you're an administrator or other person who's involved in healthcare or just interested, can learn more about specifically how you take the executive MBA and your tools that you have and apply it to the very messy and huge part of the economy, the 20+% of the economy that is healthcare, and to by doing that to help with health outcomes globally, as well as to help us to control costs in the United States.
That's great. And I think as you were mentioning that, one of the questions that came in that I think is a good segue to talking about our format is if you go, and you'll see on the screen our two formats. For the purposes of this conversation, since we're talking about MEMBA, you'll see WEMBA and MEMBA on your screen, but we are only going to be talking about the MEMBA side. This is a great time to talk about specifically how the distance learning part of that works. So for something like that healthcare portion or Washington campus or other things, when they're here, how does that work? And then when they're gone, what kind of learning takes place from a distance, and how does that relate to the format that we see here?
Certainly. So the modular format, the weekend format's a little, it's on the weekend. The modular is,
there you go.
People don't think about modules. So let's just put the weekend piece aside. The modular program, you're here in modules. You come here for 7 days, from Sunday to Saturday, for 9 sessions that are week long. One of those is a global session. I said 10 before because I'm counting there's a few days that you have before graduation that you spend on campus as well. What happens during those sessions is pretty, we talked about that already. It is, you're in classrooms and you're having discussions in the classroom. It's different from undergrad, it's different from other grad school experiences, but it's still, you're in the classroom and you're having an experience on campus. However, 33% of your learning and your credit hours for 30% for the modular program are distance. And distance education, if anyone who has taken a MOOC or any of the distance learning classes, is different. You can try to just put a lecture up and you will quickly learn that you don't need any kind of sedative or sleep aid, because you will quickly, it's just boring. So our professors, recognizing that, have spent a lot of time tailoring the distance portion to what is appropriate for non-face-to-face learning, and also what's appropriate for their class. So as one example, Steve Walton, who teaches the operations course, he puts a lot of his lectures that you would normally see in a classroom, he puts those online, and he expects you to do those, see those lectures before you come into the classroom, along with reading, along with doing cases, so that when you're in the classroom, you're having a discussion about content and he's not delivering it. It's a discussion, not a lecture. Likewise, with Ed Leonard, who teaches our marketing, he puts, during the distance portion, he does simulations. So this is something that you could do during classroom time, but it actually is more effective if you do it over a 2 to 3 week period where you have multiple decision points. So it depends on the faculty member, but they have spent a long time thinking about what's appropriate for them and to tailoring the distance portion so that you are, A, you feel connected, B, you're learning in an appropriate way for that class and for distance learning, and C, it's a rich an environment and as interactive as it is in the classroom.
I think that's a great way to sort of summarize kind of when you're here and then the when you're away part. I think some of the concern that comes in is people are worried about during the distance time, how much of it am I doing on my own? So it's like, it's not that you're not on your own, but it is structured on your own. There's a reason why this portion of work is done from a distance and why this portion of work is done in the classroom. And to your point, each faculty member has a different rationale for how they do their distance portion of their class, but overall, your in-class learning and your distance learning complement one another.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and it's not like in the old days of distance education when you get a lesson in the mail, you get a lesson in the email, and you read it by yourself, and then you send off something, and nobody ever responds. Most of the distance learning you actually do, even if it's an individual assignment, you're still working in groups. You're in a assigned group all the time through the program. It changes over the course of the program, but you're always in a group. Sometimes that group has deliverables that are group deliverables. Sometimes you have individual deliverables, but this group is your your core. This is your life raft, and you'll be working with them and meeting with them regularly via Skype and other distance, all the things that you use in your normal business to connect and to grapple with this material when you're not on campus.
And how do you take into consideration, different time zones and different areas, and we're working on this here, and on the other side of the world, I'm in the office. Is there an intentionality to the way that is set up so that from a distance, everybody can contribute to their best, if you will?
To a certain degree, but I mean the reality is, welcome to global business. I spent 15 years working with people in India. People all over the world, and you figure out ways to make it work. And I think in that way, I mean, this is an adult program. I mean, we're all adults here. We're all senior and advanced in our careers, and we expect that you figure it out. And this is just another part of your job. And we help you as much as we can, but you're all responsible people and responsible for figuring out how to work as a global team.
And I think that's a really, really good way to describe the idea that we're going to arm you with the tools that you need. We're going to give you the distance learning tools. We're going to give you the assets. But ultimately, teams have to figure out how they're going to work together. Teams will have to figure out, if you've got a team member that's in another country on another time zone, works even evenings or something, we'll have to figure out how that works because you're in these teams to be able to be productive.
Yeah, that's right. And really, this is, the point about that this is this you should treat exactly. It's not planet studying or planet Goizueta. This is just like you should treat it just like a regular part of your job. And indeed, the people that you're working with on these teams, you don't know who you're going to work with in the future, either in your job now or in an entrepreneurial venture down the road. And that's actually one of the things that I find as a dean to be most interesting is the fact that we are all professionals and all peers as well as students and faculty.
Before we leave this slide, Julie, I want to make sure you have a chance to talk a little bit about the class profile for MEMBA and sort of what does that look like? How does it compare? But also just kind of how impressed are you with that? Because I think you've got a really impressive class, and that's what makes the education experience here for the members so valuable.
Yeah, it is, as JD was sharing, it's really exciting to work and to interact, to get to know our member candidates. They're bright, they are ambitious, they are, they're individuals that have, that really want to invest in themselves by deciding they're going to go through this program. It does take support from your boss or your company, whether that's financial support or time off, but you certainly need that to say, I'm going to be doing this, doing this program 1 week a quarter, essentially. individuals that come into this program are pretty extraordinary. In a recent class, we have had individuals who are directors at Home Depot that have, they're overseeing $70 million in revenue.
Billion.
I mean, $1 billion.
No, a little zero.
They're individuals that, they're individuals that directors or chairman of departments within hospitals. Individuals, for example, at Emory that run the anesthesiology department or other departments with big span of responsibility. It's a pleasure to get to know them. They are a demanding group in many ways, but it's demanding for themselves, but also individuals that really are excited about learning. And as JD was saying, our faculty really enjoy engaging with them. And so that's something that I know I really enjoy, that I've enjoyed over the years is seeing these candidates and just seeing where they go after the degree, what kind of responsibilities they have. So there are individuals at major companies or working for themselves or working in sort of a professional services role. They're both here in the region. They're in Atlanta. They're in the region, but they're also outside. They are, we have someone in the current class that's commuting, so to speak. He's traveling from Turkey. He has a major role with a Fortune 50 company in a PR management role, investor relations, a key role there. So that just gives you a sense of the types of backgrounds and that we're able to recruit at Goizueta.
Right, before we move on, I definitely want to make sure that we get a chance to talk about kind of the what's next, because hopefully you've heard some things in the overview of the program that either sparked your interest or confirm what you were thinking about this being the kind of place you want to get to know more about and get involved with. And so one of the very distinct ways that you can do that is to get engaged with us, whether it be through a consultation or an event. So I'm going to move us on and let Julie talk a little bit about kind of the value of getting engaged with us for next steps. So now that you've heard this and JD has given you a fabulous overview of how the MEMBA program can really, impact an individual's career, Julie can talk a little bit more about, you're excited, so what do you go ahead and do next, and how do you take the next step for this year or for future years?
Right. Well, a couple things. First of all, there is still plenty of time to apply for this year. We have an application deadline of July 15th. But that is not we still review after that. We still review all applications that apply to the program. So it's certainly plenty of time to apply for our September modular MBA class. But I encourage you, there's several ways that you can get started. Probably the best way to do that is to schedule a consult. And again, that can be in person or on the phone, and that will be with a member of the admissions committee. And I do think that's pretty distinctive. That's something that's not true at a lot of schools. We don't have individuals that just quote unquote recruit for us. When you have a consultation, you are meeting with somebody who's a decision maker and someone that can really be a good advisor for you too, in terms of what the program experience is all about. I also encourage you to plan to come to Atlanta. I know that JD has talked a lot about the benefits of being in Atlanta. Those of you that have been here before, either live here or in the region, you know what a great city this is. But if you're coming from outside, you've never been here, or certainly if you've never been to Emory's campus or our beautiful building, you need to come and experience it for yourself. We're going to have a class visit day specifically from MEMBA on July 18th. Let me say that again, July 18th. You should absolutely go online to register to attend. It's going to give you, there's no better way to see for yourself the quality of the instruction of the class in the classroom from our faculty, the engagement of the students, the liveliness of the discussion, and also just the genuine joy it is to be in a classroom and just to be around with like-minded, ambitious people. It's really exciting. And the best way to do that is to come to a class. So we encourage you to come on July 18th to the class visit. You'll be able to have the opportunity to have lunch with with students, other candidates, but also faculty. It's a great opportunity for you. You can have as I said, you can have a personal consultation anytime between 9:30 and 5:30, either by phone or in person. You can also reach out to us online. You can get information about how to do that. You could also go ahead and start an application. Again, all that's online. You can do that. You can also go ahead and request a GMAT or GRE test waiver. That's another way to get a sort of an assessment of your fit for the program. The GMAT or the GRE, the standardized tests, are required, but because executive MBA candidates have so much experience, and in many cases through their work, they can show evidence of quantitative preparation for our program. We encourage candidates to go ahead and to apply for a waiver. So there's several things that you can do. But I just encourage you to get started. The best way is to really to ask questions and to come and visit and to see what our program's all about.
Fantastic. I hope that we got a chance to answer your questions, not just about what to do next, but also about why you should do what you want to do next, and why the modular program, modular MBA here at Goizueta is just distinctive, and also a fantastic fit for individuals who are looking to be able to expand their executive experience in a more holistic way. And I'm going to refer back to kind of JD's overview of those points and those pivotal elements. So make sure that if you're interested, you schedule the consultation or you reach out to an admissions counselor to find out more about how those things can relate directly to your career and your aspirations. On behalf of JD and Julie, I thank you guys for taking some time out with us this evening. I hope you'll have a chance to come to the event on July 18th, the modular event. There is still time to definitely to register for that, as well as to apply for this year, so that you'll schedule a consult or a follow-up conversation soon. Otherwise, we thank you for joining us, and have a great evening or day. I recognize I'm in a different time zone. Thank you.
Thank you.